Um, Essentially, what I would argue is that a majority consensus doesn't necessarily indicate factual truth, because there have been majority consensuses throughout history and probably on a number of topics that I'm not necessarily qualified to define now that don't necessarily make things true. If you ask people a couple hundred years ago whether or not the earth was flat, they would say one thing versus another. And just because the largest proportion of people said it doesn't necessarily make it factual. Facts have to be backed up by the evidence. As to your other point about life beginning at conception, I don't disagree that life begins at conception. Where I would disagree is at what point do you define something as human versus clustered cells, right? That's the real discussion between. Because if I took out just, say, like your kidney or a piece of your bone, is that a human or is it part of what makes up a human? And should we value those things the same way? Because you're right, something is alive at the point of conception. I disagree that that thing is human. It's made up of things that make up humans in the same way that your bones, skin, teeth, tongue, lungs, what have you, are human technically, but it cannot sustain itself. It has no conscious thought. It has no ability to exist outside of the organism that is within, and so I would no longer define that as human in the same way.
Okay, so you brought up tissues. When an organ is taken out of the body, do they call it alive?
They call it viable depending on whether or not you're going to transplant it.
They call it viable. So viable, it doesn't matter if you're going to transplant, it's viable. So viable meaning that like it's still something that's able to be used. It's obviously not functioning, so it's been disconnected. But the thing that, that made that organ definitively viable was when it was connected to the person it was taken out of that was living. So the thing is that like, when you're saying that like when you're making the relation between an unborn human being at any stage to an organ, that's not really it's not really an argument there. That's like they're two very different things. The human that organ is in is the reason why the organ exists, right? So like if you're talking about like if you're saying at one point that like when during the development process that at one point that being is not human, it's human from the beginning. So when we look at like dolphin embryos, when a dolphin conceives, and we go and we make sure, because they were endangered species, we go and make sure that like there's been conception, right? They go and look, oh, there's a dolphin embryo, and then they watch from beginning to end. It is what it was conceived to be, whether that be a dog, whether that be a dolphin, or whether it be a human. The thing is that liberals seem to care more about protecting animals than they do about protecting the unborn. They will protect a calf from being turned into veal, but they won't protect a baby from being aborted into nothing.
Again, when we talk about human, we have to discuss the distinction between of human and independently human. Because you're right, a woman's body is developing the fetus into a human, but
what is a fetus?
It is a collection of cells that will eventually develop into a human.
What is the actual definition of fetus?
Provide one.
A fetus I'm sure I've just jumped in the conversation, but from the moment of conception, life begins. And it's not a dolphin life, it's not a giraffe life, it is Homo sapien, therefore it's a human life. And that's why I'm pro-life, because I believe that all humans, regardless of size, age, location, deserve human protection. So a fetus, just like a child is not an adult, but those are still human. And like a fetus, it's not a child, but guess what? They're both human. So therefore it deserves protection.
And again, the cells in your kidney are alive. That doesn't make, and they are human cells. That doesn't make them independent humans.
Human life and human cells are not the exact same thing either. I mean, if I scratch my palm right here, yeah, that's human cells, but it's not life. It's not human life. It's developing.
Yes, which is where I think that I'm going to come back to the point that the argument is somewhat disingenuous, because when you say that biologists have arrived at a consensus that life begins at conception, you're right. They think that things are alive in there, that there are living cells, there is living tissue within your body. That is not the same as defining that as a human life.
What?
I'm saying that the fetus has living tissue cells. It is alive because those cells are alive.
But you still haven't defined what a fetus is. Sorry, we had a threat, so I'm just communicating. But you haven't defined what a fetus is.
Again, I'm getting there, all right?
It's a very simple definition.
It's simple to you because
No,
you're
it's
coming at it-
simple to medical terminology. It's simple to every doctor in this nation, to people that pick up Google and they look up what fetus means.
It is the early stages of human development.
Okay.
I'm still developing.
So the fetus describes age. It's the same thing as saying, like, this is a pubescent teenager. It defines the stage. Fetus, in its definition, is an unborn human being. The fetus describes the stage that human being is at. So you go from like fetus, right? And then you go from, infant to toddler to child to teenager to pubescent teenager, which is preteen, to teenager, young adult. It describes a point in the development process for an unborn human being. That's what it is medically. So I'm just saying, even abortionists, but when they use the term fetus, they know what they're saying. It's a point in the development. It's not like that's the thing. You guys are like, the fetus. It's like saying the teenager doesn't deserve to exist. It's the same thing, dude.
Because we're talking about pre and post viability outside of the mother.
No, we're talking about the developmental stage of a human being. That developmental
I'll accept that
stage.
it's a developmental stage.
So from fetus to old man, it is a developmental stage. It is a point in the development. That's what it is. And for some reason, you guys completely overlook that it's just describing the point of the development stage. You're like, that's a fetus. That's not a human being. Well, no, it's literally a human being in its fetus stage. Okay, that's what it is. And that's every liberal goes, no, it's a fetus. It's like, no, it's a teenager. You can kill it. It's the same thing. Like, and I just want you. It is. If you go look it up, to you, it's not the same thing because you didn't know that because you're listening to all these different lectures. You're researching, looking at different articles that align with your belief systems to back up what you believe. But if you actually go to the science of it, it's a developmental stage. So it's defining the stage of where the human being is in developmental. State my sources.
Yes.
Go look up any medical journal.
You're making a claim.
Go ahead, Hazel.
I want your source.
CDC and NIH both have said this. CDC did a study with 5,000 biologists, and 97 of those biologists confirmed that life begins at conception.
Okay.
So it's not just like a 51% of biologists; it's 97% of biologists.
And they define fetus as a developmental stage for a human being.
Again, I'm willing to stipulate that it's a developmental stage for human. What I want to discuss is pre and post viability from the mother, because primarily what we're talking about is that before a certain point, the fetus cannot exist outside of the mother without dying, right? Like if it were to be born too early, it would.
So I'm going to say this: I have a 1-year-old son. Mm-hmm. If I put my 1-year-old son in a room with a fridge filled with food, and an access to water with tops on them, do you think he would survive? Do you think he'd be viable?
I think that a 1-year-old, maybe
viable. No, he wouldn't be viable. He would starve and die. Okay, because he doesn't know how to open a fridge. He doesn't know how to open a water bottle. Okay, he would starve and die. Okay, that is the viability argument is so asinine. I have a 2-year-old. Okay, if I had a 2-year-old in the house, he doesn't know how to open a fridge yet. He can't reach it. If I left him in that house, would it be viable? No. If I left the door open where there's a street, does he know not to go in the street? Is he viable? No. He has a high likelihood to die because there's not someone with a developed prefrontal cortex nearby. Okay, that's the thing. So viability argument is just completely false on a logical and moral level.
There's a difference between exigent circumstances like starvation or dehydration and dropping dead from inability for your body to sustain itself.
So here's the thing. This is a problem. This is the danger of the viability argument. It presents an opening to up to term abortions. And like up to term abortions, when your definition, the baby is completely viable, where it can breathe, its heart can beat on its own. Do you know what they do to those babies when they do up to term abortions?
I would argue that I'm not a supporter of up to term abortion.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. But I'll tell you the danger of that viability after injecting the poison in the baby, a lot of these times, especially in Oregon, they come out still alive and they leave them to die, okay? Which is a direct violation of the Hippocratic Oath. But because of liberal ideology, we have demeaned the importance of human life where we can disregard a baby dying on a table.
Again, I want your source.
You can,
No.
There was a
You're
book-
making a positive claim.
No,
If
no.
you're making a positive claim, I want your specific example source.
There is a book called Why I'm an Abortion Doctor by a lady named Margaret. I think that's her name, Margaret. And she wrote about these specific instances, and she wrote about leaving the babies to die, and she talked about 9-month abortions. She talked about 3rd trimester abortions. So yeah, it's happening.
And who is Margaret? Is she a doctor? Is she
Again.
a
The book
biologist?
is called Why I'm an Abortion Doctor. So
I'm
she's
going,
an abortion
I'm
doctor.
going to tell you the same thing that I told the other person that came up to the table. You need to learn your oppositions. The greatest thing about debate, and I will tell this to any student watching, left or right, the greatest thing that you'll have when you go into any conversation is the complete and utter understanding of what your opposition believes. And what you came up is you don't have the complete understanding of what your opposition believes. You know what you believe, you know what you think is right, but you don't know what we find moral, what we find just, whatever.
I'm not necessarily prepared to position myself on the issue at all. What I'm arguing is that
But you said you did debate.
When I say that I have debate experience, I mean that I'm trying to engage in this discussion honestly with you. I have certain skills in terms of articulating myself, in terms of making the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay.
What my issue lies in that I think that you guys are making positive claims. I think that if you're going to make positive claims and try and cite sources, you need to be able to cite the specific examples that you're talking about, because you brought up a book. You're not looking at the book in front of you. I'm supposed to take at face value.
So do you want us to like have a computer screen up in front of us for things that we've learned? Like you made a bunch of claims too. Can you make the claim of like, you know, who described viability and what viability meant?
That's an opinion-based claim.
It's
right?
not. There's actual abortionists out there that have that actual theory and that justification for abortion. It was one of the biggest things our pro-life activists fought for the past 8 years. So you can't back up. I'm just saying, dude, that's such a disingenuous way to defend yourself and not being able to support your claim. Because I'm not going to come up here with computers. I'm not going to come up here with a bunch of books and be like, chapter 3, page 4, section 8. No, dude. Like the thing is that it's. You need to be able to come up prepared. If not, we would have AI talking for us, man. And a lot of the people that came up and they did use AI, I'll tell you very proudly, we were still able to prove them wrong. AI disagreed with them. They had to search it up several times. So I'm just saying, if you have a question of what we say, look it up. You can pull out your phone right now if you want to. Like, this is debate your truth. That sign, even though it's pointed over there, is for you to debate your truth. So if you need to bring up AI, I am so confident in Hazel and myself and our statements. You can look it up, try and prove us wrong. You won't be able to.
Again, when we're talking about debate, I think that positive claims have an obligation to provide their source directly.
So I want to clarify this. Debate your truth is pointed at the students. Okay? You can use whatever resource in your arsenal. ChatGPT. I think liberals. Do liberals use Grok? No, I don't think so. So ChatGPT. Okay? You can literally pull whatever weapon you have in your arsenal out against us, and you can debate your truth. But I promise you that while it's myself, James Owen, Hazel Roberts, Kai Schwimmer, or Fabrizio Gonzalez, you won't be able to prove us wrong. But we want you to have the ability to debate your truth.
All right. I mean, honestly, at this point, I feel like the discussion is non-productive. I just think that if you're going to use specific sources, you should provide those specific sources.
You have ChatGPT. You can look up our claims and try to prove us wrong.
I don't trust ChatGPT's
You can look us up. You can look us up on whatever article you want to. You're not going to be able to prove us wrong. We'll be backed by science.
I'm really confused because I did give you my sources.
Yeah, but you're talking about the broader context of the book.
No, I gave you CDC and NIH.
I don't have the book or the study that you're referencing. I want you to be able to cite to me the specific sentence from that study, not just, it says this, because then I have to trust at face value when you're defending an ideological position.
You don't have to trust.
That the evidence says what you say it does. If I want to counter your evidence, I want you to have the specific line from that study.
I actually have it memorized.
I would love to hear.
I'm going to say it one more time. Okay? One more. You can use whatever resource, ChatGPT, Grok if you want, if you're brave enough to use it, Google, WebMD, NIH, CDC, to refute anything that we're saying up here. You can pull out your phone right now. And I know the reason why you're not doing that is because you don't want to be definitively proven wrong. And that's the thing. It's like we've had students that came up here and fact-checked us real time, and they're like, oh, well, I agree with you on that point because ChatGPT told them that we were right.
What's the name of the NIH study?
The CDC study. Well, just search up when does life begin, and then it's a CDC study, and it's 4,857 biologists that were asked when does life begin, and they did their studies, and they all 97% of them confirmed that life begins at conception.
It's loading. I don't know how long it'll take it to load, but I've got it searched up here. But this is my point, is that even if I'm willing to stipulate that life, because I do believe that there is life at conception, where I think that you're putting your ideological bounds onto that study is where you say that is definitively a human being.
No, it's not our ideological bounds or what we believe. It is the facts that we agree with. It is the facts backed by research, backed by trials. Savannah Craven says it very well. It's just facts, and that's what we stand in. So because you don't agree and your opinions don't align with those facts, doesn't make you right, and it definitely does not make Hazel and I wrong.
Just because you call it a fact doesn't mean it's a fact, because her sentence was, life begins at conception.
What is a fact?
I agree that there is life at conception. What I disagree is whether or not that is a human being. That's the debate.
But you haven't been able to prove us
and you
either
haven't been
or.
able to prove it right. You've been
I
able
have.
to prove
I
that
literally
sentence.
have. You said it was a fetus. You failed to describe what a fetus was. I described to you that there's actually no such thing as a fetus. It is to describe the developmental stage of a human being. You weren't able to refute that. Okay, and then you tried coming up and using the viability argument. You're saying the viable, like if an organ's viable, okay, and then you weren't able to refute that, and then you revert to bring up your encyclopedias and your ChatGPT research log so I can verify. No, I'm not going to do that. You have ChatGPT. You can fact check us in real time. The reason why you're not is because you don't want to be wrong, and that's the problem, and that's it, man.
And again, you're a competitive debater.
I'm not a competitive debater.
Yes,
I have
you
zero.
are. This
no.
is what this is.
Do you think this is what this is?
This is what structured
I don't
debate
have any debate experience whatsoever. I just stand in truth. And when you stand in truth, you sit comfortably in it because you know that you cannot be proven wrong. And you don't need to take classes of debate to be able to stand in truth. That's why you're asking.
All right.
A louder mic. He also has a mic.
Yeah.
He also has a mic.
The volume. Let's do that are twice loud.
Talk.
Hello?
Yeah, it's the same sound volume. Go talk to our production team. I love the ponytail though, bro. Go ahead.
If you want to, you can be a little bit closer. We have our mics super close, and so if you want to be heard more, speak a little bit closer to it.
That part doesn't bother me. I
ignore him.
I mostly care about you being able to hear me. If the audience can hear me, that's up to them to come closer.
I will also say this to the man with the ponytail and the glasses and the pretty dope mustache. There is nothing stopping liberals from doing exactly what we're doing. From buying a mic, you can get on Facebook Marketplace, you can buy a canopy, and you can set up a college campuses just like we do. The Up America Tour is a great example of that. You guys can do the same thing. This Reawaken USA started with an idea. I saw a leader fall, and I knew many had to rise to fill his shoes. And I went and we formed partnerships with people that didn't know who we were. They loved our idea, and they put money behind it, and that's why we're here. Anyone can do that. I'm pretty sure there are rich leftists, rich Democrats that would love for college students to set up tents, go onto a campus, and prove their points, prove the points of the right wrong. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. So I will just say that. And as we grow, man with the dope ponytail and dope mustache, follow us from Reawaken USA. I would love to help fund that. I think that would be great, okay? Because the thing is we want conversation to happen in this country. We want both sides to be heard, and we want to give them platforms to do that.
We not.
I do. Go buy a canopy, man. Go buy a mic. They're on Facebook Marketplace. You can get them used. Go ahead.
At this point, again, I think that the conversation has kind of run its course. I think fundamentally we have some disagreements that, unless I'm able to find that, because right now my
No.
little bit.
I don't think you're mad.
I do have a question for you, though, if it's okay.
Sure.
So you can do the research later, okay? But if human life is proven to be started at conception, would you defend it? Would you defend the babies in the womb?
After a certain point, yes.
So then why are you even asking?
Because I believe that that early stage abortion should be permissible, late stage abortion, where the child could reasonably exist outside of the mother, shouldn't be.
Okay, but back to the viability argument. James already gave an example about his 1-year-old son that is not viable without parents. So how does viability play into this?
Because that's exigent circumstances causing death versus internal collapse because because
Okay, right.
Yeah.
because the body isn't able to
But
support it.
what's also different about that is abortions. I'm sure you know abortions in like the third trimester, they are literally ripping the baby limb by limb. Second trimester, they are injecting it with a gosh, what is it? I forgot what the name of it is called, but they're injecting them with something that will make it starve, and then the first trimester they're sucking it out basically. So it doesn't like I'm confused what you're like talking about with this, because abortion is literally the killing of the babies in this.
And the other thing that's kind of different here, friend, is that you're saying a lot of "I believe" statements. I know that killing the unborn is wrong. I know that there's no justification for it, and I know that the reason why there's justifications for it is because the adversary has his hands wrapped in so many hearts in this nation. I also know that it is my duty as a Christian, as a man of God, to defend the weak and defenseless. So as long as that's true, as long as God exists, and he has existed before, now, and forever, I will forever defend the unborn, because those are God's creation. As a man, it is my duty to defend them.
Listen, I believe that, in America we have a right of free speech, and you have every right to state your claims. Even if I fundamentally, ideologically disagree with you, I don't disagree with your right to be here and talk to people.
Yeah.
Even if, sometimes the conversation I find a little cloying and depending on who's talking. But fundamentally, I think that there are disagreements in the minutia about how we define things. And some of the problems are linguistic, some of the problems are we interpreting the same data the same way. I think I will go take a look at that study that you put forward. I honestly, I don't think that I'll come to the same conclusion that you have upon reading it.
No, that's awesome. And I also want to say something else, is that one of the reasons why we're here, and I'm not going to compare myself to Charlie, but the reason why he did what he did is because he realized that students were being told a lot of stuff that was not backed in reality or logic by professors, by people at their campuses, being completely removed from their parents, that they were raised a different way. And what we want to do is we want to come here to provide not just the perspective, but the actual facts, so that you can go and research it. And if you research it and you see that, the fetus is a developmental stage, that it is a developmental stage of a human being, and you research that and you're like, okay, I know that to be true, but I still believe, I don't agree with you, but I still believe that women should have the choice. That's amazing. But our problem is that our institutions overwhelmingly are dehumanizing the unborn. So if you go and you research that, you're doing more than over 90% of the people with your ideology. And I say that because I've talked to a lot of people with your ideology, and Hazel has as well, and our influencers on our team has as well. We want you guys to have all the information so that you can go and advocate for what you guys want to advocate for. And I don't think we're ever going to meet in the middle on abortion. This topic, it's not going to happen. But I will say for other topics, I believe that if you guys have the full knowledge, we can meet in the middle. I believe in, I believe in legal immigration. I believe that, a large portion of why the immigration process is so hard and so long is because of people not being able to sit down and talk together. Bipartisanship is non-existent on the issue, so we have extremism rise on both sides. Okay, so I'm just saying that part of the reason why we're here is not to prove you wrong. We want you to debate your truth. And then if you find that you're not standing in it, we want you to go find it.
So I'm going to ask you a question in response to a statement that you just made, which is,
go ahead.
You think that there is an institutional failure, but just like you brought up that somebody else could bring a canopy and a microphone and have a conversation in the same way that you're doing right now, there are lots of, wealthy conservatives who have the money to start universities. If it's an institutional failure in that way, why hasn't it been rectified by somebody with, the means doing what you do, setting up an institution?
I think it has. I really think it has. Christian schools, Christian colleges have become very, very loud about pro-life topics when they have there's entire curriculums on it. Basically training their students or teaching their students how to defend life. I think that, you said that like a Democrat setting up a table, right, and doing what we do. The NF America Tour is doing that. I don't agree with Destiny or Harry Sisson or Dean Withers or many of the people on there, but I will say that they know their stances. And they're going out there, and I support it on one accord, and that is that they've done their homework and they want to go out and not neutralize, but create a neutrality in culture so we can have these discussions. Very looking forward in the future to be able to do co-events with them, to have these even more dynamic discussions with our students.
Fair enough.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much.